Since we just have about half an hour, I'm going to get right into this, into talking about conflict early warning and an example from Kenya. So I'll just start off with a little intro clip. All right, here we go. All right, so this is what I'm going to be talking about how in the context of Kenya, the Kenyan government has sort of come on board with using ICT for conflict prevention, conflict early warning, and just in general, just using more of ICT. We've used Google Maps in the development of a conflict early warning system. So that's what I will be talking about today. Just a quick example about what has been done over there. So as I showed you in the video, usually there is a disparity between the collective and what the government has been doing. And in order to sort of see what's been happening in the world in a more prescriptive lens, we need to be able to look at how the government engages with people. So the traditional governance structures that we've seen has been sort of a top-down governance. The collective's lives have been influenced by career politicians. So the whole idea of democracy that we have seen in general were more from that point of view. And as a result of the control of media by government, etc., they were the ones who had the voice piece and the vocal piece, and then any sort of disgruntledness by the general public has sort of been in no cohesive manner been able to be shared to the government. So this is what traditional governance has been like. Now, as a result, we've seen sort of these revolutions happening in different places. So when we look now into the direction in which governance has been going, we're looking at collaborative governance. Collaborative governance is sort of now understanding that there is a medium in which the larger public is able to engage with one medium using various networking tools to be able to notify us to what they are upset about or what they think about certain policies, etc. So it also centralizes the whole governance structure. It also gives empowerment, and it's a hybrid form of government that a lot of countries are starting to realize is the only way to go, just with the whole movement of technology. So now you have a more cohesive way of trying to bring your concerns to the government, and then the government has a need to respond. So the only way to go is by embracing it. So the introduction is the embrace. Now that I'm talking about Kenya, we can see that my personal engagement was actually done with the United Nations Development Program, which is specifically now working with the government of Kenya. And this particular unit was tasked with making an early warning system. It was formed after post-election violence. Some of you may have heard about the post-election violence. It happened in 2008. There was a large number of people that were killed, large number of IDPs as a result. And then the next sort of, I'm setting a backdrop here as I'm talking. The first unit was UNDP that I talked about. The second unit that I'm talking about here is the National Steering Committee on Conflict Management and Peace Building. This is a hybrid organization in Kenya that engages with government as well as civil society. It's a very unique place. It sort of acts as a bridge. Most of the time, civil society would complain saying that we don't quite get to see what the government is doing. There's not a lot of engagement directly happening. So how do you sort of reconcile that disparity? So hence the position of the National Steering Committee. They have something called district peace committees, which are sort of all over the country of Kenya. They are local chiefs, they're volunteers, they're pastors, etc. And they are more influential in the local arena as opposed to politicians. So you're sort of really coming down to the community level as well as engaging with government with such a structure. Post-election violence in 2008, like I'd mentioned before, there was many people said that it wasn't something that they expected, but there were enough signs. Almost every election in Kenya has been violent. There was sort of an investigation done called the WACI Commission, where they found out that there was enough information for us to prevent things that were happening. There is political ethnic benefits. So if your president from your particular ethnic group was elected, then you as a whole ethnicity would benefit as a result. So that's sort of just giving a little bit of a foundation on what was happening there during that time. Now, crowdsourcing tools that were used during the post-election violence, they were blogging, Facebook, and Ushahidi. For those of us who are unaware of Ushahidi, Ushahidi is a crowdsourcing tool that uses mapping technology, et cetera, to be able to see where SMS text messages are coming from. We'll be able to log on to a site to be able to see how that actually works in just a little bit. And Facebook and Twitter as well. They were some of the things that were used. The media was another arena that was used for during the conflict as some means to prevent. You could see some of the media newspapers during that time, Save Our Beloved Country, et cetera, so they could be used for positive messages. Now the traditional concept, this is what I'm going to be really going right into, is of conflict early warning. CEWS is what we're going to be calling from now. A lot of conflict early warning was disorganized information sourcing. There was a huge gap between knowledge, knowing that there is an early warning information coming in, and the early response, which took a long time before they actually brought them together. And then there's a lack of cohesive response strategies. So for example, even if you didn't know, you would go and try to firefight and prevent something, but it wouldn't be the same because there's other people doing the same thing from some other side. So you just have sort of this disorganized feel of conflict early warning. This was before the integrated conflict early warning system. Prevention has turned into firefighting. Because of the lack of cohesion, you'll have one guy thinking he's doing something very unique by putting out a fire, and then another guy thinking the same thing. And as a result, again, lack of cohesion in the response strategies for the system. Now, what this system incorporated was three major areas: the national sourcing, the media sourcing, and the crowdsourcing. These were the three main tools that were used for the conflict early warning system. Traditionally, conflict early warning systems either had the national sourcing, which involved intelligence, which involved the peace monitors on the ground, internal security, et cetera. That was one type of early warning. Or the other kind, which was completely crowdsourcing, was just relied on people, which if you think about it is kind of like a blog. It's just a whole bunch of people who might write a lot of things, but the implementation factor of such crowdsourcing was lacking because it wasn't connected to these other levels, such as the national structure sourcing. Now the media sourcing, which is extremely critical in terms of accountability of conflicts around the world, is sort of just making use of a structure that is already there. We have reporters that are in different parts of the field. Their job is to go out there and report on things that are happening on the field. Why do we need to send someone there to find out what's happening when you're already getting information there? So hence, bringing those three together to form a very sort of accurate conflict early warning system was very key. So a conceptual idea, how do you bring this together? And why do we need to bring this together? So first, I'm going to touch quickly on this whole idea of crowdsourcing, in which Ushahidi has been very much a part of. And you can see sort of the rationale being that most conflicts happen wherever there are people. And people have many ways to say things, and some of the means that they use are SMS technology, you got computers, internet, and they have a potential to bring about something called smart mobs, which is what we've been seeing happen lately. So these smart mobs are basically the collective. They behave in an intelligent way, and they can increase exponentially, sort of like the way we looked in the video earlier with one cell phone kind of replicating and its messaging going all through different places. Then social coordination, and self-organizing. So you can have masses coming together without necessarily a governmental way to say, let's all come here for such a protest or something like that. These were some of the tools that were used most recently in various places like Egypt, etc. I think we're all familiar with these. Here's sort of the rationale for crowdsourcing to link on to SMS. If you look here at the trend, back from the year 2000, the blue there talks about how looks at the developed nations and the cell phone usage there. And now you look at the developing nations up into 2010, you'll see that the majority of the cell phone subscriptions that are happening worldwide are there. Hence, you can see sort of the trend in which cell phone technology has been going. Again, here, this is another global ICT development, 2000 to 2010. We're looking here at mobile cellular subscriptions going up. Another reason why crowdsourcing is dependent on SMS technology and mobile cellular technology. Here, social networking. This is just a quick map of Facebook linkages across the world, where most of the relationships tend to sort of focus on. And you can see the big blackout in China, which has a repressed sort of place where the whole social networking experience has been sort of subdued as a result of governmental interference. But you can just sort of see the linkages there, and as a result, see how important it is to incorporate those into various structures of governance. So here is sort of how conflict early warning has sort of changed. First in generation conflict early warning systems, they used to be a top-down, state-centric kind of early warning system where you have people like intelligence, et cetera, reporting for early warning things that are happening. A lot of conflict zones nowadays have the first and second early warning systems. Perhaps some of them have the third generation, which is managed by NGOs. This is kind of like Ushahidi, which is more crowdsourcing, et cetera. But the fourth generation is sort of a hybrid. It's a mix between open source software, that means things that are available to like Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, and the Ushahidi platform, as well as SMS to make a more comprehensive early warning system. So this is sort of the direction that we're trying to lobby governments, et cetera. So this is just an example from Kenya, and this is what they have decided to go for in Kenya, a 4G system. Media sourcing, various forms of media. The rationale for media sourcing, it's already reporters on the field. Google Alerts, very important tool in terms of conflict early warning. You'd be surprised to know how much is unknown to even local countries, which Google can probably bring into. The use of Google Maps for just visualizing data from different places, how it is changing, the conflict is changing, what kind of services are available in what area, how to respond as a result of using these maps, etc. Newspaper, radio, TV, pretty self-explanatory. National sourcing, this is the part that this system is very uniquely focused on because what it is it's very prescriptive to the country. So as I'm going to go through this, if you do have questions on this, you can quickly perhaps just raise your hand and ask, but I would prefer we take questions at the end. National information sources are peace reports, UN security reports, and internal security reports. This is generally how the national sourcing of reporting comes in. So what happens is these reporting structures take a lot of time. You have somebody sitting out in the field who would fill out a report, and then you'll have someone else receiving the report. And it takes time to read it and sort of make it into sort of comprehensible data that you can then respond on. So in Kenya, Kenya is governed by this area called, not governed, but rather has IGAD, which is Intergovernmental Authority on Development, which is sort of overseeing these 7 countries in terms of conflict prevention, et cetera. They have a system called CWARN, which is Conflict Early Warning and Early Response, and its mandate includes Kenya as well as 6 other countries. But sometimes the information gap that I had mentioned before between early warning and early response could take up to 3 weeks, by which time it's too late. You already have loss of lives, et cetera, that have happened. And the person who usually collects this data is overloaded with information and has to sort of make it into a manageable piece. Lack of information gathering network framework as a result of all this disorganization that we're seeing. So what we had was those open source reports where people on the field were just filling out information into pieces of paper to now an indicator-based multiple choice report. This is a way in which reports are instantaneously graphed. They're customized to the location of reporting. They have a low bandwidth interface. So an indicator, what is an indicator? An indicator is sort of, instead of having you fill out and spend a lot of time filling out things, I will just have a statement and you can choose how to answer to it, whether you strongly agree to a statement, strongly disagree to a statement, agree to a statement, or if you don't know the answer to the statement. And what the system will do is, based on your answer, it quantifies your response to seeing the severity of such an indicator. Whether if you say strongly agree, and the indicator is marked as something that is really potentially volatile, I would be able to respond to it a lot quicker. So usually each template has about 50 indicator questions that people can respond to, at which point they will then be able to respond immediately to such a thing. Qualitative information to quantitative information. So this is just some of the lingo that I might be using. Is an indicator is a statement which the user responds to based on observation, and a template is a group of indicators, and a cluster is a group of templates, okay? So we won't be getting into that too much right now, but just because of time. But that's sort of the structure. Now, the reason that we have to tailor these indicators to different areas is that we can't have one size that fits all. The conflicts that are in Kenya are complex in nature. You have some places which have pastoralist kind of conflicts, rural or urban. So the same suit cannot fit the other 2 areas here. The development of customized indicators. So these were developed by myself and some other people. We'd go down into the communities and we'd look at what the problems were within that area and come up with what these statements are going to be like. So in Kenya, we would go up north to closer to the Turkana region. Sometimes we would bring them over to Nairobi and we'd be asking them as to what it is that that they need in their area that would respond to some of the problems that are there. And they were finally agreed upon using the Delphi method, which is a group understanding of a certain statement is better than just one person deciding that this is the way to go. So again, just showing this difference, we have governmental structures saying one thing and then the separation of the people saying the other thing, but the idea of the system is to break that barrier down. So now, conflict early warning, 3 tools, just sort of bringing this home here, is you got the national sourcing, media sourcing, and crowdsourcing, but you still have it in a disorganized box. But what this interface does is you start to increase your radius of coverage from national sourcing, which was just in some places, media sourcing with some places, but now you have the crowdsourcing, which incorporates pretty much every other radii. And this is what the system does. It gets all this information into the conflict early warning system platform, and then disseminates it into the different areas based on location, priority, et cetera. This is the situation room at the National Steering Committee, which was designed after the software had been put in place. The situation room is equipped with 8 computers and has a way to Skype with field monitors on the ground. We can use the places, mostly the hub for analysis of these reports that are coming in, either whether it's SMS or whether it's the monitors on the ground, et cetera, the media updates, and then we can visualize the conflict trends and make decisions in a more cohesive manner. You can see some more pictures here of the Situation Room in Kenya. And this is where the analysts sit, etc. The three interfaces that we're using for the conflict early warning system, one is a public interface. This is where the crowdsourcing aspect of the whole system takes place. It's very open, it's interactive to everybody. The field interface is a low bandwidth interface that the reporters use when they are logging into the system. They'll log into the system in a low bandwidth interface. If they have slower internet connections in the remote parts of Kenya, they can log in, and it's a very simple interface. Just submit their report by filling out strongly agree, disagree, etc. to the reports. And then the NSC interface, which is sort of the admin view of the whole thing. So those are the three main interfaces. Now, this is the main interface. Now, I'm going to ask Derek, if we do have time to go through these interfaces, then I could do so. But if not, I could take questions as well. Okay, we'll take a look. All right, so this is the public interface right here. It's called Amani Kenya at 108. Amani being peace and 108 being the short code that we acquired through the Communications Council of Kenya. It's a free short code, kind of like Crime Stoppers. You have a number, but anyone can SMS. And SMS technology in Kenya is in many ways quite superior. And here we're just seeing sort of the public, any picking up keywords in Kenya, et cetera. And then on the right, you have a column where we can sort of update on things that are happening at the National Steering Committee. Now, this site is on the web. It's online, but it's not live. It's not live because it hasn't been advertised until this 108 code is going to be gotten, which is supposed to be in about 2 to 3 weeks. As soon as that's gotten, they will start an advertising campaign, by which time people will be responding to the reports that are coming in. Over here, how the public can use their voice to report. They can use it either through SMS, email, Twitter, or just submit a report right here. So they can submit a report just on this form down here. You can see that if they want to keep their report private, they can just put a certain code before their the things that they had to write, and it's kept private. Otherwise, it appears on the left here, and everyone will be able to see what's been coming in. And the idea of having something verified or not just gives more credibility to the information, so that that anyone can write anything over there. And then we have some minor encryption just down on the bottom here for submitting your report. An interactive map just shows, as my SMSs are coming in from the field, I'll be able to look into what categories they are distributed in. So right here, we're looking at this is samples, obviously, because it's not live. You can see where the two messages have come from what part, and I can view the two reports, zoom in, zoom out, what those two reports are. I can filter it based on what type of categories I have chosen to put in for the system of crowdsourcing. So if I'm using for sexual assault, theft, property loss, etc., they automatically get filtered as I immediately send the SMS in. Yes? Yeah.
Where's the integration?
Yeah. Right. So this is the public interface, right? So as I just go down here quickly, and I'll show you what the rest of this page is. So it's just another report. Now the integration comes here. This is where I, as someone in the Situation Room, would log in and be able to look at how this data is coming in. All right. So now this is at the National Steering Committee. I log in. All right, so this is sort of a little bit of usage here. This is just showing where my location at the Situation Room, as a user, I was positioned in this place in the beginning. So it just shows my info right here. And then if I were to go into Manage SMS, I can just say, click on View SMS. So this is, again, an admin view, which is much more complex. I can see where the reports have been coming in. So if the report has been sent by the public, it comes up on the left as a sender being public, and it just shows me the message, etc. and where the location, all the taggings, all of that. Now, you see the thing on the right, which is the coding. So some of the problems that we've noticed is with platforms similar to Ushahidi is that you have multiple messages coming in from different places. So for example, if there's a fire here on the Google campus, you have 20 people calling 911, which if you were to display that on a map could give not a very accurate way to represent one fire. It sort of gives the idea that there might be many fires happening here. So what it does is a conversation is added within that, sort of just like Gmail does it, is like you have this conversation just kind of going back and forth, and hence you have that code on the right. And then you can see the keywords over there that was picked out from that SMS that was coming in. And then as a monitor, if I'm a monitor on the field, I'm actually assigned an SMS code, which you can see here, view your SMS code is number 1. So for example, if I am in Nairobi, but I'm actually supposed to be based out of another part of Kenya, and I get intelligence that something is happening on the field where I'm supposed to be based at, I can send an SMS code from my phone with 1 and then hash and then whatever the SMS is, and I'd be able to sort of notify the Situation Room that it's me who's reporting, hence increasing the credibility a little bit more of the information coming in. Because the problem with crowdsourcing and depending completely on crowdsourcing is that if you rely completely on sort of the group, there is a possibility of manipulation of information, which has happened before that we have noticed. So in order to sort of help with reliability on that, you have these monitors. So if, for example, 5 people here say there's a fire, we're like, okay, immediately, the closest one who's there, check it out and be on the standby to respond instead of just responding. Because sometimes you do respond, but the fire's somewhere else, actually. And that's the manipulation of information that we can possibly see. So this is the SMS part. If you see here, there's something called an alter tag time, or add an SMS tag. So I can choose and customize completely what kind of tags these SMSs are coming under. They can be Swahili words, they could be Spanish words, French words, whatever it is that you're using, lingo, just local colloquials, etc., to be able to pick out the right words to go under the right filters and folders. The auto tag time, what it is if you're a sender just going back and forth with the Situation Room, just trying to find out more information, it keeps it all into that one folder without actually displaying it on the map, and hence just showing a better visualization, more accurate visualization on the map. So that is sort of the SMS part. Now, if they are submitting reports via the web, like on that website, you would see it coming over here. You can see it says here, that would be the number that shows it up here. It'll be here, public, and you can see what kind, whether it's SMS, etc. So,
is all of this shown on a map? Or?
Yeah. So all of this is shown in the public sphere. I can actually view SMS on map here.
So as an administrator, could I mute certain reports or not?
Can you mute?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the ability, so there's 3 levels of access within the system. You have an administrator and you do have a super admin. The super admin is the one who totally deletes that. And the reason for that is just because you don't want to have too much of ability to be able to just delete what you don't feel right and stuff like that. So I can select a DPC location and view things that are coming in by that DPC. Is that sort of answer your part about the public sourcing and the crowdsourcing aspect of?
I was more wondering, so you suggested that it was important to integrate crowdsourcing media and kind of national intelligence. So I'm curious where that integration happens.
Right.
Is it just that all those different reports come into the same interface and you can see them in the same place, or are they correlated at all?
Okay, so there are 2 aspects to that. One is they are on the same interface, yes. And you search based on your keywords. So for example, if there's something happening in this place, you can sort of get a whole search result, which in some way is kind of an integration of sourcing. But the other part, which is very critical, is regarding on the human element, which is in the Situation Room, where they are actually people there who are supposedly trained in conflict management that know what is happening where, and they're locals and they're sitting there, that's the plan, is that they're having it there. Now we do have people who are sitting there and are doing this, and we have seen that it has been successful. But the crowdsourcing part obviously hasn't been launched, but in terms of the other part, we're able to see SMSs coming in from a peace monitor saying that something is happening on the ground here. There's a trade, a rite, or a ritual that's happening, which means there's going to be an attack in the morning. So we can send the security forces to sort of quell whatever violence might be happening there.
My follow-up question is to that, is that this seems like a tool that a repressive government, say, would really like to have their hands on, right?
Very good.
So
yeah, very good. And in fact, I'm going to get to that as soon as I'll go through a couple of these, and I'll get to that right away. So here, I'm just going to show you here how I'm managing the users that are that have been associated with the system reporting. So here I'm having, for example, different reporters from different parts of the field. There you can see what part and level of access they have, what kind of template they're using, and what kind of indicators, etc. And you have all their contact information, et cetera, all together in one place. I have a feeling that this resolution is causing that interference there. Manage locations. I can view and edit locations. Let's see that. So this is, again, where based on how they have reported on the field and how they have answered their questions, they've been assigned colors. So you can see what area has been sort of more volatile than the others based on their reports. And you can just be able to see who's reporting, how many reports they have done, and sort of those kinds of things. So this is part of the national structure sourcing. And then if I were to go quickly here onto the media reports, the media reports are put in physically by a person on the ground who's going through newspapers, all the other media, because not everything is electronically available there in Kenya, so hence they're doing both. They're sort of consolidating all the electronic media as well as the others and putting it, if they find YouTube clips or if they find news clips, etc., they can attach it to that media article. So hence you're developing a sort of archive into place for the media aspect of it. So you can see here, that's also based on keywords, etc. You'd be able to look. Now, going again in terms of the integration, I can view places by location. So if I were to view, for example, just Nairobi, I can see all the different reports in a consolidated way to be able to see what's happening on the ground in that particular area. So now that's this, and then here's just the search the report now. Now, if I were to go back to the PowerPoint here, so here's the tool coverage. Now what's important to hear is that in terms of sovereignty issues, okay, this is kind of where the whole international community always grapples with questions about how far can you extend your access into sovereign governments. First of all, you need to be able to convince them that it's something that can be embraced. It's not something to fight against. Okay, that's sort of the first step. So if they choose to fight against it, it's kind of not doing any good in terms of bringing it, which is why it's considered collaborative more so than it is just a direct democracy or any sort of thing. So that's the first thing, and then the second thing is. I'll actually go to this slide here. What are the underlying ideas of such a system? The decentralization of authority, okay? Because that text message that you saw earlier, which was go to EDSA, wear black, that was sort of one of the first big things that we saw with a text message that happened in the Philippines that caused the revolution there. Just a few words, but we were able to sort of bring the collective together. The centralization of information. Now that, I think, is key into the whole idea of repressive regime. If it's all located in their office, right, Perhaps the alternative would be some sort of cloud where you'd be putting this information, or perhaps into another area. But this is a negotiation that is always going to be a back and forth. To my little experience, it is possible to say and convince that it is in their best interest to have it backed up in some other way. It seems that they haven't been saying, oh, no, we don't want that. They first show concern to it, but then after you mention the good reasons to have something like it, I mean, it's up to the negotiations, and it's very case-by-case basis. I think you might have another question. I'm just going to go through these other things, and then we'll go back right to your questions there. Accountability of leadership. Now, the thing is that as a result of this early warning system information coming in, it's not just them who have access to this information. At the end of every week, an HTML link is sent to civil society on the ground, giving a whole list of what's happening in different places, kind of a little security report. Now, civil society, I mean, we have to give some benefit of the doubt there, at least if it's not for the government. You're opening up a whole platform which has strictly in the past been a closed system to a much more open, accountable system, and sort of relying on the capacity of the collective to be able to do that. But here, what you're doing is you're also encouraging governments to take it on instead of fighting it at first. I think that's, in some way, the direction in which this example from Kenya has been. I don't know if that's a little bit, I mean, we can talk after as well, so. All right, some of the lessons learned from this is the early response to an early warning. It's called an auto response. What this system does is, as a result of these indicators, the way they answer. So for example, if I'm on the field and I fill out my situation report and I have a whole bunch of indicators, what has been happening in the past, I send it out and it's sort of sent to limbo, and I wait for 3 weeks and I don't know what to do. I'm going to be sitting down on the ground waiting what's going to happen. So I have sort of now prescriptively, based on the indicators and how they have answered, been able to direct them immediately as to what to do. Okay, so on the ground you have these chiefs or whatever they are on the ground. They're able to now click submit on their form and be able to say, okay, go to the local this and talk to this, go to this, talk to this, go to this. So you've now sort of, what was once a wide gap between early warning and early response, you brought it a lot closer with a very little bit of an overlap. But I don't think it'll ever be completely overlapped, but that's the way the reality of the thing is, because it's so prescriptive and based on how the conflict is. But you have brought it a lot closer to usual traditional early warning systems. So that's very critical. Uyano's success. Uyano was a platform that was developed, just an SMS, very simple, black and white kind of system for the referendum in Kenya in 2010. You would have someone SMS, we'd call the person who SMS'd, find out. It took about 5 minutes of back and forth. This one does it pretty much instantaneously because you're getting it and you'd be able to categorize it and stuff like that. The second one is participatory early warning, which is key. People power cannot be ignored as part of a larger structure. So you would see that governments in general, even though they are centralized, they realize that a lot of their, just even examples from North Africa and Middle East right now, eventually, if things aren't kind of taken care of business in the interim, it's going to explode. And the pilot testing, the local monitors on the ground, what they really appreciated about the system was the huge importance of that auto response feature. So those were some of the lessons that we learned during this time. New developments, February 2011. I mean, we've seen the Egypt's revolution, et cetera, what's happening in Libya right now. Hillary Clinton announced the State Department's looking into spending 20 to 30 million to promote the voice of the people. Now, I think like we can always say that they'll block Google, they'll block Facebook, but what we've seen is that as a result of these blocking, there's like 10 other softwares that are coming out to which you can sort of get around those things. And, you know, we are relying on the people to be able to find them and hence get information out. And perhaps that would be the next challenge in which we have to be looking at, is to see what happens when, you know, we've decided to sort of stop what's happening in terms of the internet space in our own country. That's kind of the next step in which we're thinking. So. If you have questions, now is the time. I really had to rush this because we made it a 1 hour presentation into half an hour. I'm hoping it's good for time. Yeah. So thank you very much. I'll be happy to take a couple questions or, yeah.